All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I am so excited that we get to hear from Jeff Olson. Jeff is a very good friend of mine. He and his wife, Tony, both. I just love them dearly, and I'm so blessed that we have been able to be on a health and nutrition journey for over 19 years. So Jeff is a two-time Olympian, you guys, amazing skier. He's a three-time national downhill champion, Pan-American Gold Medalist. He likes to go fast, and with momentum comes great things. He's also done 2 TED Talks. So I'm always impressed by that because I think that takes a lot of guts to do TED Talks, and they both are absolutely fabulous. In addition to that, he has done a lot of really great things after, retiring from finance. He helped co-found Metro Denver Health, which is now called Live Well in Colorado, which is well known here. He has served on several boards for things like multiple sclerosis, and he right now is helping the Olympic Committee develop a plant-based eating program. So tonight he's going to talk about EAT and how to fuel for performance, whether you are somebody that just needs a little motivation to get off the couch, or whether you're wanting to just really enhance, your elite performance. I think you're going to learn a lot. So Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you. Did we lose Jeff? Uh-oh. Well, here he comes. He's coming back.
Sorry about that.
Well, you got a good introduction anyway. There you go.
I'm sure it was fantastic. Thanks for that great introduction, Reagan.
So we turned it over to you.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Good evening, everyone, and happy fall. It's raining hard out here in the East Coast. Just moved from Colorado to Boston, Massachusetts for a short stint in the adventures of life. But I heard it was a beautiful day in Denver. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in tonight. And it's always a privilege, and it's always happy to come into this community and share with you kind of my head and my heart and my life experience and what I know to be true. For those of you who don't know me, I competed a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away in professional athletics. Then I worked on Wall Street, and then I worked in technology. And for the last 20 years, I've been on the sidelines, as it were, trying to help athletes and people bring out the best in their game, if you will, on the sports side, but really trying to help just the everyday performers do better. And if coming kind of out of my athletic past, if athletes kind of are anything, they tend to be ruthlessly practical, and they always are looking for what works. And there's a sensibility and an aerodynamics to that sort of mindset. It's keep it simple, keep it sensible. Will it work? Will it last? And in that sense, the comments that I'm going to share with you tonight kind of come out of the last 20 years of me trying to get back to simple and get back to sensible and get back to, what's built to last. And it stood the test of time, the conversation. When I got into this conversation, 20 years ago, we've just kind of added around the edges, but the core has been always the same. It's, the difference between sort of the good life and the life that, you hope, you and those you love have is oftentimes sort of boils down to kind of a simple daily replication of the fundamentals we all know to be true, whether it's eat well, move well, sleep well, love well, work well, pray well, and whatnot. So tonight, obviously, it's in the eat well bucket. That's really this conversation in this community is around how to help people get on that road to better health. And I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Michael Phelps. I don't care if you're my grandma, greatest generation, next generation, type 2 diabetic, type A personality. The cool thing is what makes the body work is food. What makes it work well is good food. What makes it perform on demand and do what you want it to do when you want it to do it is great food. But it happens over time, right? If food does things for the body over time. And we often stumble, mumble, fumble, are humbled. I use that phrase a lot because it gets down to sort of, it's easy to bask in the false coziness of unapplied knowledge. It's in the doing. Eating's a blue collar activity, and you can have all the intellectual horsepower, but if you don't do the do and walk the talk, and there's a disconnect there, because we live in a society that has really made it difficult to eat well every single day. And it's sort of extraordinary. Doing that every day is become not common, not ordinary. And so in that sense, we can have I'm going to share some slides here, and just give me a thumbs up, Reagan, if you can see. Can you see that?
Yep.
All right. So here we go. So, we can have a whole lot of conversations about food. Oftentimes after a couple of cocktails, if you're a foodie, you can get really into it. And you can go down a lot of different rabbit holes. I kind of come from the caveman perspective, the guy perspective, the bro perspective, and what's the bottom line, and does it work, and does it taste good? And all, guys are pretty simple, but if you're a foodie, if you're a woman, if you're a nurturer, women tend to be more in the nurturing part of this conversation. You can get really excited about all this stuff and go down a lot of different rabbit holes and get really, really distracted. I try to keep it aerodynamic. I try to keep it light and simple. Sometimes I've overcomplicated it in the past, but the older I get, the more I realize that, you got to work really, really hard to keep your thinking clean and to make it simple. But if you can do that and stay the course, big things can happen if you just play that out over time. That's a paraphrase of a Steve Jobs quote, but the fundamentals rule. It's kind of the bottom line, and that's sort of rediscovering the obvious. Here are some of the conversations we can have about food. And I'm sure there's some webinar, some Zoom going on right now about any one of these things, right? But in the end, my experience has been there's really three things beyond, sort of left brain, right brain of this food discussion, and in the middle of the execution, like doing it, using the science and using the, if you can stand at the convergence of, humanities, of just the human, habit of eating and the knowledge of it, and then actually sort of figure out how to apply what you know to be true. Oftentimes, as I said, belief is the booby prize, but there's really, when you get down to sort of the science of it, right? If you're into that knowledge quest of it, I'll try to make it really simple. Food does three things beyond the joy of eating. All right. Beyond the joy of it and the taste of it and the emotional side of it. That's maybe one side of the coin, but the other side, the science side, I'll distill it down to three things. Food does three things to the body. It builds, it fuels, and it conditions. We've grown up with, the fueling for performance, fueling conversation, the building conversation, and then sports nutrition or diets. It's fueling and building, but the conditioning part of the equation is really the newer 21st century part of the discussion. How does food condition us? Certainly we understand the fueling side, the gasoline side. I think many of you, we live in America, and America sort of maybe inappropriately focused on proteins. There's a bit of a protein myth in our culture, but the building side, building muscle, gaining muscle, and weight loss and weight gain, and all that is fueling our bodies and building our bodies. But the conditioning side, conditioning physiological function, making the body, training the body over time with the chemicals found in food. That's what gives you physiological durability. That's what gives your organs and systems and tissues an adaptive response to keep on keeping on. When I was an athlete, I thought of myself as this high performance Porsche or Ferrari, and probably what I should have thought of is I wanted to, instead of that car, I want to be a truck. Well, you want to be both as an athlete. You want to be a Ferrari on game day, but 99% of the rest of the time, you want to be a truck. You want to be physiologically durable and be able to train and get up and beat your body hard, and then get up and do it again and again and again and again. And now at middle age, I just want to be up and be able to roll, and I want to work my body hard. I want to do this. And that's a conditioning effect from food. And so when you get down to these three realms, as I call it, the fueling and the building side are really the macronutrient side, the protein, carb, fat side of the equation, kind of 20th century terminology, 20th century conversation. It's still important. It still matters, and it's still relevant to making the body work. But it's only 2/3 of the equation. And oftentimes, if you just focus on the conditioning side of the equation, what you're looking at in building and fueling is really quantitative, right? It's calories, it's milligrams, it's measurement, it's quantitative eating. Qualitative eating really comes on the conditioning side, and it's the domain of micro nutrition. So what is macro and micro nutrition? Well, it's sort of like, many of you have heard me use this analogy before, where, we talk about what we see, and what we see in culture, what we see in the media, what we see in social media tends to be a macronutrient conversation, although that has changed really in the last 5 years as plant-based eating has really elevated. But athletes want to know why plants make the body work, why it makes the body perform, how it gets my body to do what I want it to do. And it's the domain of food that has no calories. So it's everything else. It's beyond carbs, it's beyond proteins, it's beyond fats. And so the 20th century terms, are vitamins and minerals. And, in the last 10, 15 years, it's, enzymes and antioxidants and fiber and pre and postbiotics and phytochemicals. And, there are tens of thousands of these things. You can't see them, you can't taste them, you can't touch them. You can oftentimes taste phytochemicals when a piece of fruit or a berry or a vegetable is vine ripened, and you pick it straight off a tower garden, right from the ground. You taste that luxurious taste. That's vine ripened produce, as we say. That's where the taste is at its maximum. You can actually taste the phytochemical richness of a food. So you can actually taste it. But this happens. All this stuff that goes on in our body will occur what medical doctors will call subclinical. So it's below the hood, it's deep inside us, and it happens at a molecular level, at a cellular level, at a systems level, a tissue level, and you oftentimes can't see it, touch it, taste it until it's just in time when you want it, or it's too late. It's a double-edged sword, right? You can go the wrong way. Food is a weapon, man, and it's the biggest drug on the planet. You got to know how to use it well. And so, when it comes to micronutrition, there are literally tens of thousands of these molecules, tens of thousands of phytonutrients. And beyond the fueling of the body and the building of the body, it conditions physiological function. It conditions homeostasis, which they call health, which is the absence of disease. It conditions physiological fitness, which is you're off the couch, you're doing stuff, and you have that vigor. And over the long haul, over a career and an athletic career, let's say, it will condition peak physiology to be that Ferrari in the moment and then get up the next day and be the truck. And kind of, I call, there's 3 stages of health. If you want to think of health as a spectrum, there's the homeostasis side, which is the absence of disease. And there's the fit stage of health. And then there's the peak stage of health, where you have to be physiologically fit first before you can go out on the field to play and have sports performance, right? And so in sports nutrition, as an example, I make the distinction with athletes between what I call human performance nutrition and sports nutrition. Human performance nutrition fuels for physiological performance first. And it's kind of the same for everyone, pretty much. But then sports performance nutrition can be different, whether you're an anaerobic athlete, a power athlete, an endurance athlete, and that mixture of macros between carb, proteins, and fats. As an example, endurance athletes sometimes will access fats as a fuel source if you're doing long distances. If you're trying to gain mass, bodybuilders, they rely more on proteins. And so that macronutrient mix, that quantitative side, is relevant to sport. But when it gets down to the body physiologically performing, being physiologically functional, with the absence of disease, prevention of disease is actually performance inside the body. And so, for people that are aging, the name of the game is to, slow the aging process. Anti-aging is sort of a weird term, but we're living longer, but our health span's not equaling our lifespan. And I want to be a gamer grandpa, right? I want to be off the couch doing stuff, banging hard and rolling and going, and having the younger generation say, I want to be like that dude when I'm his age. I play soccer with 20-year-olds, and I had a 20-year-old last year say, I want to be like you when I'm 50 something. It's like, but whatever age you are, this is the kind of the 20th century plant-based part of the conversation. It's micronutrition is where it's at. And these are, some nutrients that are in an apple, just to give you kind of that frame of reference of the iceberg, right? These are some of the phytochemicals found in a fresh, whole, clean apple. Now, you can't put that on a label. You can't put that on a nutrition facts label that you buy at the store. So there are limitations to labels, right? And when you buy whole food, you don't look for the label, because you know that there's all this stuff inside of whole food. And so this conditioning effect, I talk with athletes about, are you familiar with food conditioning with nutrient dense foods? I said, food does things for the body over time. And there's playing a game here over time, the long game. It may not mean anything. You may not feel anything in a day. You may not feel anything in a week or even a month, but you have this compounding effect over time where you're trying to access winning physiology, peak physiology, physiological durability, a strong adaptive response, greater recovery. I tell athletes, there's no such thing as overtraining, only under recovery. Human performance gains happen in recovery. They happen when the body is reclamating, restoring, rejuvenating, rebuilding, remaking, reconditioning, reinforcing itself. And all that comes late at night in heavy REM, when you're deep asleep, when human growth hormone comes out to do its work, and it intermixes with the food that you've consumed. And the biochemistry of all of these phytonutrients, phytochemicals, conditions the physiology to do its job. And so what it looks like in this picture here, I have a picture of an athlete, but imagine this picture of a pregnant woman. Imagine this picture of your grandparent, of your child, of someone you love. You want all of these things physiologically to be doing what they're supposed to be doing when you want them, or when you subclinical, right? So this stuff occurs when you don't even know what's going on. And it's a bit of an abstract, right? That's the micronutrition is a intellectual abstract thing, because it's so deep inside of us. We have to make kind of that leap of faith, say, I'm going to put this on the field of play and then go do it. Right. And so physiologically, we activate stuff in our body. We modulate stuff in our body. And we attenuate, blunt, or protect stuff in our body. And for athletes, it's kind of summarized with a recovery conversation of regenerating and adapting to higher ground and being what I call physiologically durable. Who doesn't want to be physiologically durable? And all of this comes from the micro side of food. This is not involved. The macro side, proteins, carbs, and fats don't impact this stuff. The molecules and the biochemistry from nutrient-dense plant foods is what brings all of this stuff to life. And so the challenge in our world, though, is we as a society in the modern world, and we've exported this lifestyle out around the westernized world. The modern world is people just aren't getting it done. They've moved off the farm, they've moved away from nature, and they're living in an urban environment, and they have a sedentary lifestyle and eat processed food for the most part. And there was a stat put out earlier this year by the CDC, and it said that 90% of Americans do not eat enough fruits and vegetables every day. 90%. Now, the problem with that stat is it was the same stat 10 years ago or 15 years ago when I got in this game. So, we haven't moved the needle for whatever reason, and we're kind of rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic when it comes to public health. Because if there's a demilitarized zone around food, it's produce, it's fruits and vegetables, it's berries. Everyone sort of agrees, and it's a cross-cutting conversation, whatever dietary sort of philosophy you come from, right? And so we're just not getting it done. And if you're an athlete, it's double digit. And for a man, 9 servings a day, I don't know a lot of men that do that. It is a lifestyle, and it is a road less traveled. There is no question about it. And you can acclimate taste to this, right? And that's the other thing is I have a lot of people who, fruits and vegetables just don't taste good. Well, we've kind of anesthetized palate. We've neutered taste down to sugar, salt, and fat. And there is a training of taste, a conditioning of palate that can occur when you begin to consume more matter, more nutrient-dense matter. And if it doesn't taste good, one of the things that I've experienced over the last 20 years is using plant powders as a functional food, as a way to kind of sneak or cram more matter into your body that matters. And I've been using these plant powders, Juice Plus, for 20 some years. And I use it every single day. And there's a conditioning effect. And when I first got on it 20 years ago, nothing happened in the first day. Nothing, a week later, the needle didn't move. It took me months and months and months before I began to notice some real subtle, nuanced things in my physiology. Now I understand at my age of middle age that I recover faster than my peers. I can go hard with my body, and my recovery is strong because I've conditioned my physiology with nutrient-dense foods. I started out, as a good eater back then. My wife's a foodie. I eat even better now. And if you look at athletes that you admire, I'm involved right now with a project with the International Olympic Committee, and we're putting together a plant-based playbook to distribute to athletes around the world. What triggered this for me about a year and a half when the Game Changers movie came out, and it was this provocative Hollywood thing. But I've been preaching this stuff for the last 15 years, and I kind of felt like John the Baptist out in the wilderness, and here this cool, sexy Hollywood movie comes along and shows all these athletes, right? So if you think of the GOATs in athletics, Serena Williams eats mostly plants. Lewis Hamilton, Formula One. Carl Lewis, 9 gold medals, sprinter, mostly plants. Tom Brady, mostly plants. Lionel Messi, mostly plants. Novak Djokovic, mostly plants. Mike Tyson, mostly. These people eat predominantly plants, and they're doing it because it gives them a physiological advantage. Phil Mickelson, when he came back and won last year, he reoriented and reconfigured his diet to eat mostly plants. Now, all that to say, do they eat meat? Of course they do. They eat a little bit. Not some of them are 100% vegan. I'm not a vegan. I'm not a vegetarian, but I eat 80, 90% plants. And when I'm traveling, maybe I'm 75, 25. But the world needs to eat more plants. Those you love need to eat more plants. You probably need to eat more plants. And so plant powders, what I've found in my experience is it's a simple food-based way, a functional food. These plant powders are a food-based way to kind of bridge that gap. And when it gets down to it, we've got fruit, vegetable, and berry powders, nutrient-dense matter, right? It's not a vitamin pill, but it's got vitamins and minerals and enzymes and antioxidants and phytonutrients and pre-probiotics on it, and plant shakes and plant oils to give you that micronutrition that you maybe aren't executing. Like, nutrition is only as good as your execution. So just kind of in closing, I like to say that, we're all athletes in the game of life. You will be held accountable by the rules of the game you choose to play. And the rules of the game of physiological vitality get down to nutrient-dense plant food. Can't get around it. And the 21st century is going to be about, and the bro science and the sports science of nutrition is really going to show how eating more plants is actually the badass thing to do if you're a gamer on the field of play. So with that, thank you, Reagan, for the time. And I'll just leave it with this. Not much is going to change unless you change something you do daily in your life. And nutrition is kind of that way. You can go hardcore for 75 days, 75 hard, or you can do a diet or this, that. But what we're all after in the game of life is great lifestyle. And that's just the daily do, where you've trained things to where you're just unconsciously competent. It's just who and how you roll. And certainly plant powders have been a game changer for me and my family and our lives, and my experience in helping people cram more of that matter that matters into their body. We've seen anecdotal personal stories all over the world. But the cool thing about these powders is they speak the language of modern medicine. And there's a lot of bedtime reading material, as I like to say. We're 44 published clinical studies. If you're into the rigor of science, we have the prove it part. So I would encourage you to get with the person that invited you here tonight. Dig deeper, ask the questions, poke the bear. But in the end, it's a very simple idea of helping you, execute and bridge that gap between what you know and what you do. So I'll leave it there, Reagan. And thank you for allowing me to come and share with everyone tonight. I appreciate your time, everyone.
Well, I thank you so much for sharing. And I love that you said Jokovic, because, being, a Denver Nuggets fan, seeing him change his body just by adding plants and his whole diet and his fitness level. I remember watching him, kind of jog down the court, and now he's fierce, so I love that, food is a weapon. I love that.
Oh, the basketballer. Oh, the baller. Oh, I was talking about the tennis player. Oh, you're talking about the Nugget. You're talking about,
he also changed. Yeah. So totally different looking guy. And then I think about, Michael Phelps bragging about eating all that, fast food. And I think, gosh, he's amazing. What would have happened if he would have actually,
well, what's interesting about Phelps is that segment aired in his first Olympics, or when he won his 8 gold medals. And that was when he was in his early 20s, but he transformed his diet into the second and third Olympics, where I think at his late 20s, he won his final gold medal. And by, when he started in his 20s and by the time he tapped out in his last Olympics, he was eating mostly plants at that time.
Maniacally so. I mean, he was like, train every day, Christmas, no matter what, eat the right thing every single day, no matter what.
Yeah,
that's exactly.
And back then, you're right. He was that good, and it's like, how much better could he eat? I mean, he won 1 gold medal by 100th of a second. So, now that's at that level, athletes are looking for every advantage they get. And now, the science discovers what's easy to discover first, not necessarily what's most important. And now there's overwhelming evidence in science. And now the sports scientists and sports nutritionists are really understanding how to come to athletes and say, you need to eat more than pasta and meat, and there are competitive advantages as to why you should do that. So anyway, I'll leave it there.
Well, and I love that you are on the committee to help really train those younger up and coming athletes. That's pretty beautiful. Being an Olympian,
that's exciting. And hopefully that'll translate, across to, just around high schools and around soccer fields and mom and dads and the like. But the best in the world athletes are hungry for this message. But as you know, we work with everyday performers, and that's just all of us. So
yeah, and all of us, all can perform better. I wrote down so many notes, and I love that with Juice Plus, we're able to flood our body with lots of that plant produce every day. The thing is, for people that take it, we end up craving more, which is really cool. So, if you guys want to start eating healthier, this is a great, easy change, and get with the person who invited you. And Jeff, thank you so much. So appreciate you as always. And I will be talking to you soon.
Yeah, my pleasure, everyone. Thank you, and have a great evening, and we'll see you on the field of play. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for a great call tonight, everybody.